Hi, and welcome to this tutorial video in which I'm going to talk you through how to improve your written English by avoiding certain frequently seen problems, including run-on sentences, fragment sentences, and I hope to help you better understand sentence structure in English, as this is a key element to improving your written production. Okay, first off, one of the things that's quite handy to keep in mind when writing is the fact that English is what's known as a subject, verb, object language. What this means is that every complete sentence in English will have at least a subject and a verb, and in most cases, a sentence will also have an object, and they appear in this order: subject, verb, object. In some languages, you can move the elements around, um, or you might be required to place an ending on certain elements in the sentence in order to denote or indicate what the subject, verb, and object are. But in English, it's determined by the order of the words. Okay, and another important thing to keep in mind in English is that nothing really, if you just keep this in mind, there may be some exceptions, but in general, in most all cases, you never have anything between the verb and the object. So, for example, in some languages, you could say or write, "Cows eat often grass," or "Cows eat always grass." But in English, that's not considered correct. So again, the verb and the object always go together. Um, Cows eat grass, our subject, our verb, our object. Let's move forward keeping this in mind. Okay, so this is a fragment sentence that was written by one of my students. Why is it a fragment? Well, what you have here are two essentially complete thoughts, complete sentences that have a confusing word, which turns this into an incomplete sentence. How to better describe? Well, let's look at the first part. I need to read more in English, especially for pleasure. Do we have a subject and a verb? I need to read. Yes, we absolutely do. So indeed, this portion is a complete sentence, or what we often refer to as an independent clause. Now this part, okay, it's known as a fragment sentence, but does it have a subject and a verb? Well, yes. This is the subject, that is, reading more, and will help is the verb. The problem is here, you've got this linking word that really leads the reader to expect something more afterward, or um, leads the reader to confusion in the sense that this is not a complete sentence. This part is dependent on this part. So this is what we call a dependent clause. Without getting too technical, how can you avoid this or fix this? Well, you could write, I need to read more in English, especially for pleasure, because this will help me improve my vocabulary. Now, what's the one difference between this and this? The punctuation. Here you have a full stop indicating that these are two independent sentences, independent clauses, but they're not. This one, as I said, is dependent on this one. So what you need is a comma. Then this element here, the second part, becomes dependent on this part, and now it's a complete sentence. The other way you could fix it is simply to chop it up, divide it in two, and write, I need to read more in English, especially for pleasure, full stop. This will help me improve my vocabulary. Then you've got two independent clauses, separate thoughts that are grammatically correct. Let's look at another common error. This is what's known as a run-on. What is a run-on? Well, here's an example. The results of the study were inconclusive, comma. More research needs to be done. Essentially, this bit in red, this second element to the sentence, is a complete sentence. It's a complete thought. Does it have a subject? More research. Yes, it does. Does it have a verb? Needs to be done. Yes, it does. So this is a complete sentence on its own. What about this? The results of the study were inconclusive. Is this a complete idea with a subject? The results of the study? Yeah. And a verb? Were? Yeah. So you can't just sort of stick them together with a comma. In English, this is the way that you would have to write it. In order to fix this, you could write, the results of the study were inconclusive because more research needs to be done. This linking word indicates that these two independent clauses or thoughts are now one. You could take the other approach, which is to just chop it in two. The results of the study were inconclusive, and then a full stop. More research needs to be done. Again, two totally complete ideas that are separated. Although honestly, in academic advanced level English, as you may have seen in some of my other videos, this tends to be the preferred sentence structure. It's more fluent and just reads better and more smoothly. Let's take a look at some more examples. Okay, just to review, well, the basic, most simple sentence structure is as such. That is, the sentence will have a subject and a verb. It expresses a complete thought, and very often sentences will have an object. So, for example, subject, I, verb, enjoy playing, or it's sometimes referred to as a predicate, okay? Tennis with my friends. This is a complete sentence. I enjoy research. I hate jogging. And if we back up for a moment and think about cows eating grass, well, here's our subject, our verb, our object, and again, they come in this order. Okay. You have complex sentences as well in every language. Now, here you'll have more than one idea in the sentence. For example, although I hate research, I enjoy writing. We can't continue unless we get the funding. Now, these kinds of sentences need some sort of a linking word or correct punctuation in order for them to make sense. So here, okay, let's look. If we really break it down and decode it in a sense, you've got a subject, I. Hate is your verb, your predicate. Research. This is a complete thought. I hate research. This is also a complete thought. I, subject. Enjoy is the verb or the predicate, and the object is writing. So here we have two completely, separate entities, ideas. So we can't just stick them together with a comma. We saw that in the previous slide. We need a linking word. All right. Here, again, we need a linking word to connect these two ideas. Complex sentences. What do I see quite often from students? Well, these kinds of problems. While younger patients respond well, okay, this sentence is incomplete. It's what's known as a fragment. This is a dependent clause. It needs something else. It can't stand on its own, even though it has a subject, younger patients, and it has a predicate, a verb, respond. Because of this linking word, we're expecting more, ... It doesn't sound logical. It sounds incomplete. So let's fix it. You could write, while younger patients respond well, many older patients do not. Now again, here we've added another clause, another part to complete the thought. So you've got two ideas, two clauses in this sentence with a linking word. The other approach would be just to get rid of this linking word because it links to nowhere. You could just write, younger patients respond well, full stop. Now this is a complete thought. On the opposite sort of spectrum of writing difficulties, I often see run-on sentences. That's when, again, a sentence has two complete ideas that are just sort of stuck together. So, for example, 10% of rubbish is recycled, 20% is dumped. Or sometimes I see people stick these two ideas together with a comma. Again, in English, that's not correct, because if you break it down and decode it, you have a subject, 10% of rubbish. You have a verb, is. So this is a complete thought here. 10% of rubbish is recycled. Here you have a complete thought. 20%, there's your subject, or 20% of rubbish. And you have a verb as well, is. So we've got two ideas, complete ideas that are just stuck together. We could do this. 10% of rubbish is recycled, while 20% is dumped. Again, we've added a linking word. That works. Or we could chop it in two. 10% of rubbish is recycled, full stop. 20% is dumped. Now again, it depends on the style, what you want to emphasize, but either of these two options is correct. Okay, we're almost to the end. I have this and one more slide. Here we have what are called choppy sentences. Okay, we've got subjects were older. They were also mostly male. They all gave informed consent. Subjects all participated in the study. Now again, this is very kind of difficult to listen to. It's not pleasant to read. It's just not smooth. It's choppy because there are lots of very short, simple sentences. And again, in more basic level language, this is actually the preferred style. You'll notice that children's books often read this way. There's a reason for that. However, at this point, we're aiming for more advanced academic writing. We want to solve it and make it read more smoothly. So we could do something like, subjects were older, comma, and they were mostly male. In addition, they all gave informed consent and participated in the study. So we've just used some linkers to bring our thoughts together. Words like and, in addition, okay? And that helps it read more fluently. Again, on the other side of the spectrum, this is what's known as a stringy sentence because there are lots of different ideas all sort of stuck together, and it's not pleasant to read. 10% of rubbish is recycled and 20% is dumped, but 70% is collected, so this is significant and should be studied further. Well, again, it's not that the sentence is long, it's just that we need more smooth kind of readability. So I think the best solution would be to actually divide it up. You can have sentences that are this long in English. However, in this case, it's very sort of monotonous to read. What we could do is vary it a bit more and make it a bit more musical. While 10% of rubbish is recycled and 20% is dumped, 70% is collected, full stop. This is significant and should be studied further. So here we have a complete idea with subject and verb. Here we have a complete idea with subject and verb. Each of these sentences is actually quite complex. But again, in terms of readability, this is preferred. My advice in general would be, in order to avoid run-on and fragment sentences, well, I often advise my students to read their work out loud, either to a mirror, record it and listen back, or just read it out loud to someone else, to yourself. Quite often when you read out loud, you're able then to hear what doesn't flow naturally or what sounds odd. And you also are able then to pick out small mistakes in typing and in grammar and perhaps even spelling. So I hope this tutorial helps. Thanks for watching.